Good morning and good afternoon, folks. So great to see some folks join. I am sure people will continue to join as time goes on here, but I want to go ahead and kick us off so that we have plenty of time for our speaker to share her material today. So I'm Bianca Frogner. I am a professor at the University of Washington's School of Medicine in the Department of Family Medicine, and I direct the Center for Health Workforce Studies there. I am also part of the Award Network leadership team and the webinar committee chair. I'm really excited to have Dr. Van Park join us today. She's a professor at the School of Nursing at UCSF. And so Jarman Ye will be giving a little bit more of a brief introduction to her, but we're really excited to have her join us and share her work. And we're always interested in hearing from you all about ideas that you want to see for future webinars. So there's a QR code there to share ideas with us, as well as you can see the other upcoming webinars. That being said, actually, an upcoming webinar that we have hopefully will feature you. We are looking to do a speed sharing session. We did this last year, where we would love to hear about work that you're doing. This is meant to be a bit of a lightning round. Hopefully you got an email in your inbox yesterday about this. If not, you can go ahead and scan that QR code there and sign up. But we will certainly do another blast so that you have an opportunity to sign up again. And that will be where you can submit your ideas briefly, and just so that we know who people are and what you're interested in. So please share the word, spread the word with others. And as always, I want to thank our webinar committee members. We're actually in the process of expanding our webinar committee. If ever you're interested in participating in any of our committees, please feel free to reach out to me or anyone else on the Award Network leadership team. And we're always eager to have more people join our network and take advantage of some opportunities to lead within our network. A couple other announcements for folks, just so you're aware. There are a couple of upcoming deadlines. One is a research fellowship where you can submit a proposal to request for up to $5,000 in costs to support a fellow some of the activities that you might want to do in your research. We also have a Summer Institute application now open, and this is taking place in San Francisco in July. It's a great time of year to be there. And applications are also due February 28th. And if you weren't aware already, we are always trying to work on creating new resources for the network members. And this is one that Lei Chen, a postdoctoral fellow with the Award Network, has been playing an instrumental role in leading. This is a direct care workforce data compendium where the first product is looking at state Medicaid waiver programs. I mentioned this too the last webinar, so just want to remind folks that that is there. A new opportunity has also popped up. The PHI was selected as a host organization for a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship. PHI is one of our key partners in the Award Network, and ACLS is the American Council of Learned Societies, and they have this new postdoctoral fellowship program that's open with a deadline of March 13th. You must have a PhD in humanities or interpretive social sciences, and there's some clear definitions of that on the website. So please consider checking this out and apply. And just wanted to acknowledge too the leadership committee of the Award Network and thanking them for all that they have done to support this webinar series. And I want to make sure that we acknowledge our funder, National Institute on Aging. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask Jarman Ye to come online, as she will be our host for today.
Hi. I don't know why my camera is not working now, but it was momentarily. Oh, there we go. Just a delay. Thank you so much, Bianca. And it is a true honor and pleasure to introduce a scholar that I deeply respect and admire. Dr. Van Park is a professor at the University of California, San Francisco, School of Nursing, Department of Community Health Systems. Her primary research interest is to address issues related to racial and ethnic minority health and healthcare disparities among Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities through interdisciplinary community-based participatory research. Her research areas include recruitment science, mental health, and Alzheimer's disease and related dementias caregiving. So without further ado, I will turn the mic over to Dr. Park.
Thank you so much, Darmin and Bianca. It's really nice being here, and I'm very grateful that you invited me. I will try to share my screen. Can you see it?
Looks good. Great.
Okay. Oops. Okay. Actually, is this... There we go. That's the title page. Again, thank you so much for having me. Really looking forward to talking to you about some of the projects this morning. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to ask away, I believe at the end of, or towards the end of the session. So today I'm going to talk about meaningful engagement of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander, or AANHPI communities in Alzheimer's disease and related dementias research. And I'm going to just very briefly provide a little background, go into a few projects. And hopefully we'll have time to go through them all. I might speed talk, so who are Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander populations? Asian Americans are the fastest growing racial group in the United States, comprising almost 8% of the US population. And there are dozens of AANHPI groups, including many languages and dialects, cultural groups. And there's diversity in immigration experiences as well, and religions, diet, and social economic status. I just wanted to point out some characteristic that is really important to bear in mind when engaging with diverse ANHPI communities, and that is that there's diversity in English proficiency. So some cultural groups are more proficient in English than other cultural groups. And this is important to bear in mind as we think about, fittingly so for this seminar, workforce. We need bilingual and bicultural staff to engage, outreach, educate, provide services, treatments, etc. for the diverse ANHPI populations, but particularly those with high percentage of limited English proficiency. I'm sure many of you have heard of the model minority, and certainly this is a myth. The model minority term was coined in the 1960s as a way to really perpetuate the notion that Asian Americans, and then because Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders all often lumped together as Asian Americans, the myth perpetuates the notion that ANHPI individuals are doing just as well, if not better, than non-Hispanic whites. And it was really a way to, unfortunately, discredit the civil rights movement. And this created an atmosphere of discrimination, and where discrimination exists in all levels, and including structural racism and discrimination. And it really, unfortunately, sometimes puts ANHPI communities, quote unquote, against other racial ethnic minorities, which is really unfortunate. And it continues to this day, where many people think that ANHPIs are a model minority, and as long as you work hard, you don't need special attention, if you will. And in this case, in public health, it means health and healthcare resources. So this contributes to the fact that there is significant underrepresentation of ANHPI populations in health and clinical research. In fact, there was a seminal paper published by Dawn and her colleagues, and where they looked at the NIH, what NIH funded between 1992 and 2018. And they found that less than 1% of its total NIH total budget, and actually it's 0.17% of its total budget, went to support projects focusing on ANHPI participants. And in Alzheimer's disease research, for example, ADRD studies at the Alzheimer's disease research centers, only less than 3% were ANHPI participants, and majority, if not, are English speaking. And I think if there were other languages, it would probably be Chinese. There are many things to consider when engaging ANHPI communities to participate in research. Certainly are the cultural differences and norms, etc. Linguistic limitations. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you need to recruit and retain bilingual, bicultural individuals and who are proficient and capable of working with the communities or target communities that we are wanting to include in research. We also need to increase awareness and outreach about what research is and the importance of research to the targeted communities. So that's one side. And the other side is we need to increase awareness and outreach to research communities and funders. So folks who are listening in on this webinar, for example. So in my career thus far, I have engaged in different projects, and I'm going to go into that right with the first one, which is the Care Registry. The Care Registry is the first and only research recruitment registry in the United States that solely focuses on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. And as I mentioned before, we created this in partnership with both academic and community partners because we wanted to help change the narrative, if you will, that many people think that ANHPI communities are quote unquote difficult populations to outreach to, that maybe ANHPI individuals do not want to participate in research, when in fact, perhaps we need to provide the culturally and linguistically appropriate education about what research is and the importance of research, and have them enroll in this registry so we can then connect them to potential research opportunities. And this Care Registry was funded through an R24 as well. And we recently received a 5 years R1 grant to continue to support care and expand care. And we hope, that all of you here will also utilize care as a research recruitment source. The enrollment criteria is quite simple. You just have to self-identify as ANHPI, be 18 years or older, speak one of the care languages, which we will expand, and express interest in participating in potential research. We ask the participants a brief survey, or we conduct a brief survey asking about their socio-demographics, health conditions, health behaviors, and caregiving experiences if they are a caregiver. So here's a snapshot, and we do have brief reports in this data on our website. Most are born outside the US. Most of the registry participants are also based in California or reside in California. And that's because the R24 was set up to be initially a California-based registry. But due to the pandemic, we had to launch during the pandemic, and we therefore allowed people outside California to enroll. With CARE 2.0 and our partners outside California, we anticipate that the percentage will be more balanced with people outside California. About 11% of our participants are caregivers, and the statistic that I'm most proud of is the fact that more than 80% of our registry participants reported having no prior research experience. So it wasn't that we were reaching out to people who have already understood what research is and were already engaging in research. We were reaching out to people who never participate in research, and many did not understand what research is. So, and you can also see that the mean age is around 52 years old, and almost 60% reported having limited English proficiency. About 14% reported having ADHD symptoms. And we have more than 10,000 people enrolled in CARE. The enrollment is still open, but we aren't actively necessarily doing outreach activities until perhaps the spring, when we will launch CARE 2.0. And then I invite you to visit our website so you can learn more about retention efforts that we have, including a really fabulous YouTube video featuring celebrities celebrating our 10,000 enrollment. And needless to say, we've done many outreach activities, many with community members and researchers in multiple languages. So the first goal of CARE is really to enroll community members into the research recruitment registry. But the whole point of the registry is then to provide and connect them with potential research opportunities. So we don't want the participants to never get contacted, right? What's the point of that? And we do have a recruitment referral request process that you can find on our website. Since January 2021, more than 5,500 of our CARE participants have been referred to at least one CARE-supported studies. Many of the studies were open to only English-speaking ANHPI and other target populations they have, but some studies, about half the studies, also did have support in an ANHPI language. We recently had, this past Monday, a great brain trust meeting, and we hold this a few times a year where we give an in-depth description and about the CARE registry, as well as how to use the CARE registry for your research. Again, I invite you to visit our website to learn more. And I described this a bit already, but for CARE 2.0, we will expand the registry in the US in emphasizing or targeting the underrepresented ANHPI groups, such as Asian Indians, Native Hawaiian, Samoans, Japanese, in our registry. We will also examine registry participants' research attitudes in participation in health research. And true to recruitment and retention science, we'll examine and develop methods to improve registry retention. In the CARE 2.0 grant, we will optimize care registry participants' inclusion in different research studies and examine the factors associated with research enrollment decisions by registry participants. The next study I would like to briefly describe is the Asian Cohort for Alzheimer's Disease, or ACAD study. So as a brief background, ACAD is the first Alzheimer's disease cohort study that focuses on Asian American, Asian Canadian older adults. And our goal is to develop more reliable AD diagnostics, more accurate risk predictions, including AD biomarkers for better treatments and delivery for older Asian American and Asian Canadian adults affected with Alzheimer's disease. As of December of last year, more than 2,400 Asian American and Asian Canadian older adults expressed interest in ACAD. Among the nearly 900 who have consented so far, majority have begun or have already completed their participation in the study. As you can see here, we have many recruitment sites, and down the line, maybe the ACAD 2.0, we do want to include and expand to other populations. Right now, we are focusing on English-speaking, Chinese-speaking, including Mandarin and Cantonese, and Korean and Vietnamese. And true to providing culturally linguistically appropriate outreach materials, participant-facing materials. Similar to care, we have multilingual outreach flyers, YouTube videos, and other things as well. We also have e-cards in all the languages for different holidays. The next study I want to talk about is kimchi. And kimchi stands for Koreans Invested in Making Caregivers' Health Important. I do want to first acknowledge that CARE 1.0 and 2.0, as well as ACAD, are supported by the NIH, NIA. And for kimchi, kimchi is supported by PCORI Engagement Award. And for kimchi, we work with two community partners. One is the Somang Society, where I'm actually doing this presentation right now in Southern California, and the other one is AARIN, which is based in Northeast US. So the reason why we develop kimchi is because we know we have to develop and provide culturally appropriate educational materials about things that are of interest and importance for older Korean Americans, as well as Korean American caregivers and stakeholders. So last year, we focused on healthy cognitive aging and dementia caregiving, and did a really massive health education effort across the US via in-person, via online Zoom, YouTube, ethnic media, social media, etc. And then this year, we are now engaging in educational effort and outreach on advanced directives for Korean American caregivers. And the idea is to really provide a strong resource kit or base, if you will, for topics in this area and other areas. And our hope, of course, is that in the future, with this strong engagement base, we can then pursue perhaps a caregiving intervention study with older Korean Americans, Korean American stakeholders, and Korean American caregivers. So our family journey is a Vietnamese American dementia caregiving intervention study that I was PI for, and that was supported by the Alzheimer's Association. And And this caregiver for Vietnamese Americans, myself, as well as Wayne Meyer at UC Davis, who had her own respective caregiver intervention for Vietnamese Americans. It was the first Vietnamese American dementia caregiving intervention study for in the US. And so knowing that there was a gap and a need, I worked with mentors, including Dr. Dolores Gallagher Thompson, where we took her intervention that she had developed for other populations, and we culturally tailored this intervention for older Vietnamese Americans. And we engaged with Vietnamese American stakeholders, and our community partner also led the workshops. And what we found in a nutshell, is that there's a very strong need for any kind of caregiver study with Vietnamese American dementia caregivers, and that it was successful. They learned a lot. They, despite the demands of caregiving demands, they came and they want more. And so this is something that, at least personally, I would want to continue in the very near future. Okay, so the next study I want to briefly share is one that is funded by the NIH, NIA, and it is an R56 study that we recently got awarded, called ARISE. And ARISE stands for Asian Americans and Racism, Individual and Structural Experiences. So we know from literature that individual and area level racism and discrimination are tied to significant health disparities that influence risk of ADRD. However, this area of research for Asian American populations is understudied. With COVID-19 pandemic, I think we all are aware of the rise in anti-Asian hate crime, and even the general population got exposed to that, and some perhaps became more knowledgeable and aware about the discrimination and racism that exists against Asian Americans during the pandemic. And racism and discrimination is not new, right, for Asian Americans, but it certainly got elevated in the public light domain, as well as personally. And given where we are with what we know, and with Alzheimer's disease as well being, a very prevalent public health concern and issue, and the limited ADRD research for Asian Americans, myself and colleagues felt it was very timely to submit a grant application that focuses in this area to look at the role of multi-level racism and discrimination and its association with cognitive functioning, cognitive decline, and level of Alzheimer's disease biomarkers. So we are starting off with a very generous pilot study that the NIA has funded in focusing on California first, and having a multi-site multilingual cohort in California in English, Mandarin, Cantonese, Korean, and Vietnamese. Oh, so I already went into all of that. We will enroll about 500 people total for this pilot study, and we will also collect blood. We will ask people to provide a blood sample so we can look at both AD biomarkers and cardiometabolic biomarkers as well. We're going to do this again with community partners, having bilingual, bicultural team members, culturally and linguistic appropriate study materials. And we are also while we're setting this study up to be, in theory, remote, we realize that with our strong community partners, there is a strong preference for us to come to the community sites and do the site visits there, and we are eager and looking forward to doing that. I believe this could be my last slide. Lessons learned overall. One thing I always share with people, any opportunity I have, is that translations take a lot of time and effort. For at least the languages that we work with, we do not use Google Translate. We also prefer not to use professional translation companies, as they do not take into account the nuances, if you will, of translation, such as regional differences, even generational differences of terms, political, and there's some political context with that. So it's, from our experience, it's much better to engage your team members and your community site community partners to work in the translations. We also consult significantly or heavily with our community advisory boards for our various studies. Education and outreach go hand in hand. You can't just go out in the community and ask people to enroll in your studies and not give back. You have to provide, services such as community health forums, and other kinds of talks that would be of relevance and importance for the community stakeholders. And you need to also provide compensation to community partners and participants as well. That is something I strongly feel, that you have to compensate people for their time, travel, efforts in doing, in engaging in research. And it's not a way to, it's just a way to show that we appreciate them and that we aren't taking advantage of them. And as I said before, we need to remove barriers to research participation, reaching participants with limited English proficiency, limited access to digital technology, and transportation difficulties. And I really want to thank everyone. I believe a couple of my staff are here as well, Dr. Boranam and Mary Zhang, who really helped with this presentation. And I also want to thank our community advisory boards, our community academic partners, and our funders, and as well as the award network for inviting me. And that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions people may have.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much for that incredible presentation and the depth and range of your studies. You presented on 5 incredible, amazing pieces of work, and it's just so admirable. I have several questions. And I welcome the audience to also type in Q&A into the chat. But, every time I hear you speak, Van, I feel like I learn something. I think more critically about research and scholarship and CBPR, and I am challenged and encouraged to do better. And so thank you so much for raising so many good points in your presentation. I had no idea less than 1% of NIH funding was toward AANHPI communities. That's tiny. One question that I wanted to ask you is, this notion of recruitment science, I think, is really interesting, and I think it goes very well hand in hand with community-based participatory research methods. Can you talk more about the layers of CBPR and sort of the challenges that you've come across, and then how you've built those layers? And I guess by layers, I mean, you talk about doing really embedded stuff in the community, having a brain trust, having an advisory board. Like, how do you set up all of those layers to do it well and do it right?
That's an excellent question, and I appreciate you asking it. I think CBPR is, I'm certainly biased, but the way to go, especially if you really want to have more representation of diverse communities in your research. And the very first thing one needs to do is to go out to the community. I know it sounds kind of basic, but and that means reaching out to the community stakeholders. That could be community-based organizations that serve the communities. It could be churches and temples. It could be, other kinds of stakeholders, and going to their place and having one-on-ones, group meetings, learning more about what they do. What is it that they need? And is there an overlap there somehow with your research interests and what they do? And then just starting to participate in their events, and whether it be as an observer or giving back again, being a presenter on a health education topic, for example. Once you do that and cultivate your relationship with different community partners, they will begin to respect you more and have trust and rapport. And you can then envision, okay, how could we do a community-based participatory research study? And that often starts off as a pilot study, right? Because that's an opportunity to then build the infrastructure and history together, and to go through the kinks of, okay, how would we do all these things? The community partners, I think naturally will also provide suggestions on who else you need to reach out to and who else you need to meet and collaborate with. And you, of course, would have to do all what I just described with all of them. It is a time-intensive approach to research, but it is very rewarding. And it also, as I said, really allows you to, if done right, and with respect and conviction, etc., then you will have more diversity in your research studies. So I think another thing to bear in mind is not to go to the community, ask them to do things, but don't give back in that process, as I mentioned, whether it be paying the community partners for their space, providing, lunch, refreshments, participant incentives for the participants who got recruited from their sites, but also when you're done with the study, come back, report the results, and ask them again to engage in future research, right?
Yeah, I really, appreciate, thinking about sort of, it's slow science. It takes a long time to build the relationships. And I really love that you're detailed to even the little pieces like the multilingual holiday cards that get sent out, that sort of reciprocity that has to be built in at all levels, all along the way of the research process is really intentional, to do it well and to do it right. Any questions from others? Feel free to type it into the chat box, the Q&A box. And while folks are thinking on a question, I'm going to go ahead and ask another one. One of the things that this committee, the award network, is interested in thinking about is workforce issues. What are some of the workforce issues that you've encountered, particularly because the diaspora is so broad and there's so many different groups part of the AA and HPI community? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a really important issue and something I encounter certainly when I'm hiring, and I am still hiring, um, as I said many times in my presentation, you really need to hire, at least for this, if you have research studies that do serve um, monolingual or populations with limited English proficiency, you then, of course, would need to hire a bilingual, bicultural staff. And sometimes, I mean, there's different kinds of layers of challenges that come with that. One is, creating a job post and explaining to HR why that's necessary. And I know that sounds kind of, I'm trying to be aware of my words, but having to go through that first level of hoopla of justification, and so, and then of course I think some folks, people have different levels of proficiency as well, and then different levels of experiences working with the community. So, and then, so when you do those interviews, one thing we try to do with our projects and through CARE particularly is, this was not part of at all the scope of work for CARE, but I felt very strongly, because I really believe in mentoring our next generation and building that workforce. I didn't realize I was really doing that until I, but build. So we started what we call a Care Ambassador program. I was fortunate enough where I learned about what public health was as an undergraduate, but to this day, I don't think many undergraduate students really understand what public health is, right? And the opportunities that come with that. And it's related disciplines. And so I just wanted to, and of course, not knowing that ANHPI populations are underrepresented in research. So with that in mind, we created the Care Ambassador program targeting undergraduates or college age students and high school students also, actually, with the parents' approval and permission. And it was a very long process, but now we have a number of ambassadors through the last few years, and we hope we have provided them with opportunities that have been meaningful, where they go out in the community, they do outreach, they may even develop. We had one ambassador who developed YouTube videos and talking about it, sharing it with his counterpart. So I hope this will help just a little bit with influencing or encouraging them to be in this area of work that we do.
Yeah, I love that. That's so exciting and so creative as well. Um, I guess I'll just keep going with the questions, but also Bora and Marion, please feel free to chime in if you have some comments to talk about your work as well. Um, I was thinking about, my own family, for example. We've lived in 3 different countries in the last 3 generations, and our understanding of things like health and Alzheimer's can be quite different. And I love that you address sort of there's regional differences, cultural and generational differences to understanding all of these things. What are some of the things that you've learned that stand out to you about the nuances of those differences with the communities that you've worked with?
Yeah. So for example, working with Vietnamese population and the language, um, you we have in Vietnam, there's different regions where it's just kind of like the US, how do you say, actually, I don't even know, is it like tomato, potato, right? And so there's just different even regional dialects within the US. And that's the case as well in Vietnam. But there's also generational differences in terms and language. evolves. Every language evolves, right? And we, for example, in English, we do, we have DM, that wasn't a term before, growing up for me. And all the, acronyms that you do because of texting, LOL, whatever, I can't keep up. And um, so it's the same thing, there's terms that are more prevalent or more, in certain generations than others. And so with the changes in political climate and I think international influence and all that stuff, global influence, there are, we have to be aware that certain terms might not be understood with older adults, and then certain terms, the new terms are associated with the current government that are not as acceptable, culturally acceptable to older adults who escaped, for example, the situation. Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting. I had also another sort of more research technical question around compensation for community members, which I think is so incredibly important. What have you found has been the best mechanism for compensating community members? And also, have you ever had any pushback from funding entities about how much is appropriate to compensate community members?
Um, oh, you're asking a very yes, I have had a lot of pushback, and then I not as much now, but I once in a while I still get a comment or a pushback comment. And that's just because people are used to doing the way they've been doing it. But then if, my response is we want to make change, right? And move that needle, we have to really think about from the community's perspectives what they would need and what they would appreciate and would want. And so I know, for many Alzheimer's disease studies, for example, um, that they don't provide compensation, and maybe they don't even have funds to provide refreshments or meals, despite asking them to participate in a 4 to 8 hour visit. And so I think that for some people with perhaps the means, that might be okay, or right. But when we think about how there's diversity, not in social economic status, if you want to have inclusion of people in, various walks of life, right, in research, and not just the high SES, those who are very proficient in English, those who have lived here for generations, maybe, I don't know, right? Then we need to think again about their needs, their wishes. We're not compensating them in a way, obviously, that will violate ethics, that would not fly with the IRB. It's really to think about, okay, for example, where we live, cost of living is very high. There's no way we can, if we pay even minimum wage per hour for their time, if it's an 8 hour experience or 4 hour experience, I don't think, I don't think I'm saying to give them, to make this like a job per se, right? But just, you have to think about it. They're taking time off work. They're paying for transportation where they're driving, the time to drive or time to take the bus, the train, right? It's not also difficult to provide culturally appropriate snacks for them that are familiar to them, because then they would feel like, okay, they know me, they get me.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. I feel like having more conversations about how important it is to think about compensating participants and to compensate them appropriately for their contributions as partners to science is so important, which is why I asked that question. Yeah, it is a tricky area, and sometimes it's very difficult to find the right way to do that in a way that's meaningful to the people that are part of our studies as well. I know in some of my experiences, even like a gift card may not be an appropriate mechanism to compensate them because a digital gift card is not something that is useful, for example, to
Yeah.
them.
Right. And that's something we've definitely learned also. We've tried different ways of, where, for example, to buy in bulk for gift cards, we get it as an e-card through the university. And then staff would have to print out the barcode and then, explain how to use it when you go into the store. But then we do experience some challenges sometimes even with that. And so, physical gift card, is easier for many, and not everyone also uses Amazon, right? Or going to, the Korean market or another local store, getting gift cards there is just much better.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I don't see any questions submitted yet, but maybe I'll ask one more before our time is up. And this goes to the registry, which is just an incredible undertaking, and I think is going to be such an important thing for pushing science forward and research forward. And I was recently having a conversation with another colleague that's doing, a registry type project, and we were talking about the fraud and the bots that are out there. And I'm wondering if you've encountered anything similar in trying to do, this like very wide reach, but also, the bots
Right.
and the fraud.
Yeah, interesting. When we did our soft launch of the registry, I think within the first day or two, we got thousands of responses, and I thought, oh, we're done? Like, but turns out, of course, most were bots and spam. And so I think, so then we as a team, particularly I give credit to the staff, including Marion and Bora, who are here to create, they created a very sophisticated review system, if you will, to ensure that those who enroll online are actually genuine responses. Of course, when you work with some community partners, they help the members enroll, and so it's easier to know with confidence those are genuine. But if people self-enroll, we have to have that process, and we are actually, and the paper is on my desk, virtual desk for me to finish my review, but Marion and Bora are leading the paper of writing our experience with that, and providing our protocol for that. I don't know if Marion and Bora, you want to mention anything about it?
I guess in a nutshell, there are certain things in like the survey design phase and the way we construct our survey and the database that are associated with it, so that there are some preventative measures and kind of a well-known strategies that you can employ at the study design phase even before it gets launched. But then I think what we were focusing on, I can't take the credit at all. It's really a multi-team member work to really set up. We have a system in place where we screen and kind of group people into and based on certain characteristics of how the survey was responded. Like, for example, if they wrapped up the survey in like less than 2 minutes, then it's pretty impossible given how many questions we asked them. So things like that, where we can flag for that are potential red flags for not so genuine response, or bots can come in a lot of different ways as well. So we have that system to kind of an automated system, but then we also supplement with like a manual. So it does require a lot of resource and energy to verify those responses that we flag as, kind of suspicious. So there is a system that we kind of follow after we get these responses, and those are done on a rolling basis, on a weekly basis.
Thank you. That's so interesting and just so fascinating too. I see that we're almost at time, and I just want to thank you again, Dr. Park, for sharing your research with us. It's so aspirational in terms of all the incredible work that you're doing, and then also to peel back the layers of just how complicated this work is to do, and all of the thoughtfulness and the details that you and your team have put into every piece of your projects is truly impressive. So thank you again so much for your time. I think the Award Network community will really value watching your webinar, and I think that mostly concludes our webinar today. So thank you.
Thank you so much.